Jake Harrison sat in his comfortable chair inside the human diplomatic ship UHS Liberty. The ship floated near Kepler Station, a huge metal structure that served as a meeting place for traders and diplomats from across the galaxy. Jake had been working as Earth's main ambassador for 3 years now, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could show him. He was wrong. The morning started like any other. Jake was meeting with Ambassador Krex from the Tandari Republic, discussing trade agreements for rare metals that Earth needed for their growing space fleet. The Tandari looked like large insects with 4 arms and spoke in clicking sounds that his translator converted into perfect English. They were talking about shipping routes when every screen in the room suddenly changed. Jake looked up at the wall display. Instead of the usual trade information, he saw a massive stadium filled with people, not humans, but beings from different worlds across the galaxy. They were all chained together in long lines. Armed soldiers in black armor stood around them. Jake recognized the armor design immediately. Zethran Empire troops. Lisa Murphy, his aide and a former military officer, stepped closer to the screen. Her face went pale as she watched. "Sir, this is being broadcast on every channel across the station," she said quietly. The camera moved slowly across the crowd of prisoners. Jake could see beings from at least 12 different species. There were the blue-skinned Andraki, the tall plant-like Verdians, even some of the peaceful healers of Sanctuary Prime. Many of them looked injured. Some were clearly very young. A loud voice began speaking in the harsh Zethran language. Jake's translator worked quickly to convert the words. "Citizens of the galaxy, witness the price of rebellion against the Zethran Empire. These criminals thought they could challenge our authority. They thought they could spread chaos and disorder on our worlds." Jake felt his hands starting to shake. He gripped the arms of his chair tighter. The voice continued. "Let this serve as a lesson to all who would dare oppose the Empire's rightful rule. Justice will be swift. Justice will be complete." What happened next would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. The soldiers raised their weapons. The first row of prisoners fell. Then the second. Then the third. The killing continued for over an hour. 50,000 beings died while the galaxy watched. Jake could not look away. He felt sick, angry, and helpless all at the same time. These were not soldiers or terrorists. These were families, children, people whose only crime was wanting freedom from the Empire's iron rule. Lisa touched his shoulder gently. "Sir, maybe we should turn it off." "No," Jake said firmly. "If they force the galaxy to watch this, then we will watch it. We owe them that much." When the broadcast finally ended, the station fell into an eerie silence. Jake sat in his chair, staring at the now empty screen. His mind was racing with thoughts of what he had just witnessed. This was not war. This was not justice. This was murder on a scale that made him physically ill. The door to his meeting room opened. Ambassador Vextar of the Zethran Empire walked in with his usual arrogant stride. The reptilian being was tall and covered in dark green scales. His yellow eyes showed no emotion as he approached Jake's desk. "Ambassador Harrison," Vextar said in his cold voice, "I trust you witnessed our demonstration on Meridia Prime. Order has been restored to that world. Perhaps we can now return to our discussion about the mining rights on Kepler 442. Jake looked up at the Zethran diplomat. For a moment he could not speak. The casual way Vexatar mentioned the mass murder made Jake's blood boil. This creature stood before him acting as if nothing unusual had happened. As if 50,000 lives meant nothing. "There will be no further discussions," Jake said slowly, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "Not until justice is served for those 50,000 souls." Vextar's head tilted slightly. "Justice? Justice was served today, human. Those beings were rebels and criminals. They received the punishment that all enemies of the Empire deserve." "They were families," Jake replied, standing up from his chair. "They were children. And you murdered them in front of the entire galaxy." "I murdered no one," Vextar said with a slight hiss. "The Empire's justice system handled criminal elements that threatened the peace and stability of one of our worlds. This is an internal matter that does not concern Earth or any other power." Jake walked around his desk until he stood face to face with the Zethran ambassador. Despite being shorter than the alien, Jake did not back down. "It concerns every decent being in this galaxy. What your Empire did today was not justice. It was terrorism." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Be very careful with your words, human. The Empire has been patient with your young species. We have allowed you to join galactic society despite your primitive nature. Do not mistake our tolerance for weakness. And do not mistake our youth for ignorance, Jake replied. Humanity may be new to the stars, but we know the difference between right and wrong. What happened on Meridia Prime was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. The Zethran diplomat stepped back. The Empire will remember your position on this matter, Ambassador Harrison. I suggest you reconsider before your species finds itself facing the same fate as those rebels. After Vextar left, Jake sat back down heavily. Lisa approached his desk with a concerned expression. Sir, what are your orders? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his wife Sarah back on Earth, about his 2 children who were just starting school. He thought about humanity's place in the galaxy, and how young and vulnerable their civilization still was. The smart thing would be to stay quiet, to mind Earth's own business, to not anger the powerful Zethran Empire. But Jake also thought about the faces he had seen in that broadcast, the fear in their eyes, the children who would never grow up, the families torn apart. He thought about what kind of galaxy he wanted his own children to inherit. Open a priority channel to Earth, he told Lisa. I need to speak with the president immediately. What should I tell him this is regarding? She asked. Jake looked at the empty screen where moments before he had watched mass murder. Tell him it's regarding humanity's first real test as members of Galactic Society. Tell him we have a choice to make about what kind of species we want to be. As Lisa worked to establish the connection, Jake began composing his thoughts. He knew what he was about to propose would be dangerous. It might even be foolish, but sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do, and Jake Harrison was about to prove that humanity would not stand by and watch evil triumph, no matter how powerful that evil might be. 3 days after Jake sent his emergency message to Earth, the response arrived through the secure quantum communication link. President Martinez appeared on the main screen in Jake's private office aboard the UHS Liberty. The older man's face looked tired but determined. Jake, I've discussed your proposal with the Security Council and our military leaders, the president said. What you're asking for is unprecedented. We're talking about challenging one of the galaxy's 3 major powers over what they claim is an internal matter. Jake leaned forward in his chair. Mr. President, with respect, this stopped being an internal matter the moment they broadcast those executions to every world in the galaxy. They wanted us all to see it. They wanted us to be afraid. And maybe we should be afraid, the president replied. Our latest intelligence reports show the Zethran Empire has over 10,000 warships. We have less than 300. If this goes wrong, it could mean the end of human expansion into space. Sir, if we do nothing, it could mean the end of our humanity. Jake said firmly. Those people died because they wanted freedom. If we ignore that, if we pretend it didn't happen, then we're no better than the ones who pulled the triggers. The president was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him weighing the risks against what was right. Finally, the older man nodded slowly. You have full authorization to proceed with your plan. Admiral Kate Sullivan is already preparing the fleet. She'll be at your position within the week. Thank you, sir. You won't regret this decision. I hope not, Jake. I really hope not. After the transmission ended, Jake called Lisa into his office. Contact Ambassador Talavos of the Andraki. Tell her I'd like to meet privately as soon as possible. The Andraki were a peaceful species that had been forced under Zethran rule 6 months ago. Their blue skin and large silver eyes made them easy to recognize. Jake had met with Ambassador Voss several times during trade negotiations and found her to be intelligent and principled. The meeting took place in a neutral conference room on Kepler Station. Tala Voss arrived alone as Jake had requested. Her silver eyes showed sadness and fear that had not been there before the Zethran occupation of her homeworld. Ambassador Harrison, she said in her musical voice. It's good to see you again, though I wish the circumstances were different. Ambassador Voss, I'll be direct with you. I watched the broadcast from Meridia Prime 3 days ago. I know several of the victims were Andraki citizens. Tala's head lowered. 47 of our people died in that place. They had been living on Meridia Prime as teachers and healers. The Empire claimed they were spreading rebellion through their work. Were they? Jake asked, gently. They were spreading hope, Tala replied. In the Empire's eyes, that's the same thing as rebellion. Jake reached across the table and placed a datapad in front of her. What I'm about to show you is classified information from Earth's government. But I think you need to see it. Tala picked up the pad and read quickly. Her eyes widened as she absorbed the information. You're planning to demand the Empire face trial for what they did, not just demand. We're going to make it happen. The Empire will never agree to this. They'll claim sovereignty and refuse to participate. That's where species like yours come in, Jake explained. The galaxy has over 1,500 inhabited worlds. The three major powers control maybe 200 of them directly. The rest are independent or under loose protection agreements. If enough of those worlds stand together, even the Empire will have to listen. Tala set down the datapad and looked directly at Jake. You're asking us to risk everything. If this fails, the Empire will punish every world that supported your proposal. If we do nothing, they'll keep killing innocent people. Today it was Meridia Prime. Tomorrow it could be your homeworld or mine or any world that doesn't bow down completely to their authority. The Andraki ambassador was quiet for several minutes. Jake could see her thinking through all the possibilities and consequences. Finally, she spoke. The Andraki Consortium will support your proposal, she said, but we'll need assurances that Earth will stand by us if the Empire retaliates. You have my word, Jake replied. And you'll have Admiral Sullivan's fleet as backup within the week. Over the next few days, Jake held similar meetings with representatives from dozens of smaller species. Captain Ryan Davis of the Merchant Marine proved invaluable in these discussions. Ryan had been trading with independent worlds for over a decade and knew which leaders might be willing to take a stand against the Empire. The Helix Confederation is interested, Ryan reported after a meeting with their trade representative. They've got 12 worlds and a decent defense fleet. They're tired of paying tribute to the Empire for protection they don't want. What about the freelancers? Jake asked. The freelancers were independent traders and mercenaries who operated outside the control of any major power. Captain Sam Torres speaks for most of them. She's willing to meet, but she'll want something in return. The freelancers don't do anything for free. Jake arranged to meet with Sam Torres at a bar in the lower levels of Kepler Station. The place was dim and filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Sam Torres turned out to be a tough-looking human woman in her 40s with short, black hair and scars on her hands that suggested she'd seen plenty of combat. So you want to take on the Zethran Empire, she said, after Jake explained his proposal. That's either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both, Jake admitted. But it's the right thing to do. Sam laughed and took a drink from her glass. The right thing to do doesn't pay my crew's salaries or fuel my ships. What if I told you that? Every world supporting this proposal would need independent traders to maintain their commerce if the Empire tries to cut off trade? Now you're talking my language, Sam said with a grin. The freelancers have been looking for a way to break the Empire's monopoly on interstellar shipping. If you can guarantee us exclusive trading rights with your coalition worlds, we'll provide transport and protection for any cargo that needs moving. Deal, Jake said, extending his hand. As they shook hands, Sam's expression grew more serious. Just so you know, Ambassador, the Empire has been planning something big. My sources say they've been moving military assets toward the border regions. This Meridia Prime broadcast might have been just the beginning. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If the Empire was preparing for more aggressive actions, then his coalition needed to move faster than he had originally planned. The breakthrough came when Ambassador Prism Tell of the Hegemony requested a private meeting. The Hegemony was the Empire's main rival among the major powers, and their support could change everything. Prism Tell looked like a living crystal formation that sparkled with internal light. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. The Hegemony has been monitoring the situation with great interest, Prism Tell said. We find ourselves in agreement with your position regarding the events on Meridia Prime. Does that mean the Hegemony will support the proposal? Jake asked hopefully. We cannot openly challenge the Empire without cause, Prism Tell replied carefully. However, we have certain information that might prove useful to your coalition. Information about other incidents similar to Meridia Prime. Jake's heart raced. If the Hegemony had evidence of other atrocities, it would strengthen his case enormously. What kind of information? Records of 17 other mass executions over the past 5 years. Locations of prison camps where political prisoners are held without trial. Financial records showing systematic theft of resources from conquered worlds. Why are you sharing this with us? Because the Hegemony believes that some actions transcend political boundaries, Prism Tell replied. What the Empire did on Meridia Prime threatens the moral foundation of galactic civilization. That affects all of us. As Jake returned to his ship that evening, he felt both hope and fear growing inside him. Hope because his coalition was becoming stronger than he had dared to imagine. Fear because he was starting to understand just how deep the Empire's crimes went. Lisa was waiting for him with an update. Admiral Sullivan's fleet dropped out of hyperspace 2 hours ago. She's requesting permission to come aboard. Granted immediately, Jake said. And prepare the main conference room. It's time to plan our next move. Looking out at the stars through his office window, Jake realized there was no turning back now. Humanity was about to take its first major stand in galactic politics, and the outcome would determine not just Earth's future, but the future of every free world in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked into the conference room aboard the UHS Liberty, with the confidence of someone who had commanded starships for over 20 years. Her gray hair was pulled back in a military style, and her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Space Defense Force. Jake stood to greet her as she approached the table, where he had spread out star charts and diplomatic documents. Admiral Sullivan, thank you for coming so quickly, Jake said, shaking her hand. Call me Kate, she replied with a slight smile, and thank you for giving me a reason to finally use this fleet for something important. My ships have been sitting in Earth orbit for months with nothing to do but training exercises. Jake gestured to the chairs around the table. Lisa Murphy was already seated with her datapad ready to take notes. Captain Ryan Davis had joined them as well, since his knowledge of independent worlds would be crucial for the next phase of their plan. Before we begin, Kate said, I need to know exactly what you're asking my fleet to do. The President's orders were clear about supporting your diplomatic mission, but I need details. Jake activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, showing the locations of major powers and independent worlds. Red dots marked worlds under Zethran control, while blue dots showed worlds that had already agreed to support the proposal. Right now we have 43 worlds committed to supporting what we're calling the Meridia Accords, Jake explained. That's enough to get the Galactic Council's attention, but not enough to force them to act. What about the hegemony? Kate asked. Ryan's report suggested they might be willing to help. They're being careful, Jake replied. Ambassador Prismtel has given us valuable intelligence, but they won't openly oppose the Empire without more political cover. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, had arrived on Kate's flagship and joined the meeting through video link. Her image appeared on one of the wall screens as she spoke from her research lab. I've been analyzing the cultural patterns of species that might support our cause, Elena said. The key is understanding what motivates each group. Some join coalitions out of fear, others from moral conviction, and still others because they see economic opportunities. What's your recommendation? Jake asked. Focus on the rim worlds first. They're far enough from the Empire's core territories to feel relatively safe, but close enough to independent trade routes to benefit from freelancer protection. If we can get 20 more rim worlds to join, the inner worlds might follow. Captain Ryan nodded in agreement. Elena's right. I've been trading with the rim worlds for years. They're independent-minded and hate paying Empire taxes on their exports. Kate studied the star map carefully. Where do you want my fleet positioned? If we're too aggressive, we might scare off potential allies. If we're too passive, the Empire might think we're not serious. The Keth Nebula, Jake said, pointing to a location near the border between Empire and independent space. It's close enough to Empire territory to send a message, but far enough away to avoid looking like we're planning an invasion. That works, Kate agreed. My ships can run patrol sweeps through the area while you continue your diplomatic work. If the Empire wants to make threats, they'll have to do it knowing Earth's fleet is watching. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake's coalition grew steadily. The breakthrough came when the Talari Federation, a group of 7 mining worlds, agreed to join after the Empire demanded a 50% increase in their mineral tribute payments. The Empire is getting greedier, Ambassador Kes Talari explained during their meeting. They used to be content with reasonable tribute. Now they want everything we produce. Jake saw the opportunity immediately. What if I told you that coalition worlds would have access to fair trade agreements with Earth and the freelancers? No tribute payments, just honest commerce at market prices. You have my attention, Kes replied. The Talari Federation's decision to join brought their mining output and defensive fleet into the coalition. More importantly, It demonstrated that supporting the Accords could bring real economic benefits, not just moral satisfaction. But the Empire was not sitting idle. Reports began reaching Jake about increased Empire military activity near independent worlds. Ambassador Vextar started making what he called courtesy visits to neutral worlds, always accompanied by Empire warships. The crisis came when the Empire blockaded the Andorian trade route, cutting off commerce to 12 worlds that had expressed interest in joining Jake's coalition. The economic pressure was immediate and severe. Jake called an emergency meeting with his core allies. The Empire is trying to starve out potential supporters before we can build enough momentum to protect them. My sources say they're planning similar blockades on 3 more trade routes, Ryan reported. If they succeed, half our potential allies will withdraw from fear of economic collapse. Kate leaned back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. What if we could guarantee that trade would continue even with Empire blockades in place? How? Jake asked. The freelancers, she replied. Sam Torres told you her people could maintain commerce with coalition worlds. What if we made that official? A protected convoy system with Earth fleet escorts. The plan was ambitious and risky. Jake would formally announce the creation of protected trade corridors for any world supporting the Meridia Accords. Earth's fleet would provide military escort for freelancer ships carrying essential supplies. The Empire would have to decide whether they were willing to attack human warships to maintain their blockades. Sam Torres loved the idea when Jake presented it to her. My captains have been looking for a chance to break Empire trade monopolies for years. Give us your protection, and we'll keep every coalition world supplied with whatever they need. The announcement of the Protected Commerce Initiative sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Within days, 8 more worlds joined the coalition, bringing the total to 51. The Empire's response was swift and angry. Emperor Krathmak himself appeared on every major communication channel to deliver a warning. The massive reptilian ruler sat on his throne of black metal, his red eyes glowing with fury as he spoke. The upstart humans think they can interfere with Empire business, he said in his deep, terrifying voice. They think their tiny fleet can protect rebels and criminals from Imperial justice. They are wrong. The Emperor's message continued with threats against any world that accepted human protection. But Jake noticed something important in the way the message was delivered. The Emperor seemed angry rather than confident. That suggested the coalition was having more impact than the Empire wanted to admit. The real test came 3 days later when an Empire patrol tried to stop a freelancer convoy carrying medical supplies to the recently joined world of New Carthage. Captain Torres was leading the convoy personally, and Admiral Sullivan had assigned 2 human destroyers as escorts. Jake watched the confrontation unfold through real-time reports from the convoy. The Empire ships demanded that the freelancers submit to inspection and confiscation of their cargo. Captain Torres refused, citing the Protected Commerce Agreement. Empire vessels, this is Captain Susan Park of the Earth Destroyer UHS Defender, came the transmission. These ships are under the protection of the Terran Coalition. Any attempt to board or detain them will be considered an act of war against Earth. The standoff lasted for 6 hours. Jake barely slept as reports came in every few minutes. Finally, the Empire ships withdrew without taking action. The convoy completed its delivery to New Carthage successfully. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The mighty Zethran Empire had backed down from a direct confrontation with human ships. More importantly, the Protected Commerce Initiative had proven it could work. Over the following week, 12 more worlds joined the coalition. Ambassador Prismtel contacted Jake with an important message. The Hegemony Council has reviewed recent events with great interest, the crystal being said. We are prepared to make our position more public. What does that mean exactly? Jake asked. It means the Hegemony will formally sponsor your proposal when it comes before the Galactic Council. We will also provide additional evidence of Empire crimes to support your case. Jake felt a surge of excitement. With Hegemony backing, the Meridia Accords would have the support of one major power, 63 independent worlds and growing momentum throughout the galaxy. But he also knew the Empire would not give up without a fight. Intelligence reports suggested they were moving military assets toward coalition territories. The diplomatic phase of this conflict was ending, and something much more dangerous was about to begin. Lisa approached his desk with a priority message from Earth. Sir, President Martinez wants to speak with you immediately. It's marked urgent. As Jake prepared to take the call, he realized that everything humanity had worked for since joining galactic society was now at risk. They had chosen to stand up for what was right, but the consequences of that choice were only beginning to unfold. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was the largest meeting space Jake had ever seen. The circular room could hold representatives from over 2,000 worlds, with each delegation having their own section equipped with translation devices and environmental controls. As Jake walked to the human delegation's assigned seats, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Today, the Council would vote on the Meridia Accords. Ambassador Prismtel had arrived early and was already in position with the hegemony delegation. The crystal being's surface sparkled with what Jake had learned was a sign of nervous energy. Even with their advanced technology and centuries of political experience, the hegemony was taking a significant risk by supporting the human proposal. Ambassador Harrison, came a familiar cold voice from behind him. Jake turned to see Ambassador Vextar approaching with a massive delegation of Empire representatives. The reptilian diplomat's yellow eyes showed confidence, but Jake noticed tension in his movements. Ambassador Vextar, Jake replied calmly. I'm surprised to see such a large Empire delegation for what you've called an internal matter. The Empire takes all threats to galactic stability seriously, Vextar hissed. Your reckless accusations have forced us to respond to this farce with the seriousness it demands. Behind Vextar walked Supreme Advocate Ithrak, the Empire's most feared legal representative. The massive creature stood nearly 3 meters tall and had won every case it had argued before the Council for over 50 years. Its presence meant the Empire was taking no chances with the legal proceedings. Jake took his seat next to Lisa, who was organizing datapads containing their evidence. Admiral Sullivan sat in the military observer section, close enough to provide support if needed. Captain Ryan was in the independent trader gallery, representing the freelancers' interests. Council Speaker Melodian called the session to order. The ancient being had served as speaker for over 2 centuries and commanded respect from every delegation present. Its voice carried clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustic system. We gather today to consider the proposal known as the Meridia Accords, Speaker Melodian announced. Ambassador Harrison of Earth will present the case for the proposal. Supreme Advocate Withrock will present the Empire's response. Following presentations, we will hear testimony from witnesses, review evidence, and conduct the formal vote. Jake stood and walked to the central podium. Looking out at nearly 2,000 alien faces from hundreds of different species, he felt momentarily overwhelmed. Then he remembered the faces from the Meridia Prime broadcast, and his resolve strengthened. Honored representatives, Jake began. 57 days ago, the Zethran Empire broadcast the execution of 50,000 innocent beings to every world in this galaxy. They wanted us to watch. They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to accept that this was justice. Jake activated the holographic display system. Images from the Meridia Prime broadcast appeared above the podium. Many representatives looked away, but Jake continued speaking. These were not enemy soldiers. These were not convicted criminals. These were families, teachers, healers, and children whose only crime was living on a world that dared to ask for basic freedoms. The presentation continued with evidence provided by the hegemony. Records of 17 other mass executions spanning 5 years. Documents showing systematic theft of resources from conquered worlds. Intelligence reports describing prison camps where beings disappeared without trial. The Empire claims these are internal matters, Jake said. But when you broadcast mass murder to the entire galaxy, it stops being internal. When you use terror to control not just your own citizens but to intimidate free worlds everywhere, it becomes everyone's concern. Jake's voice grew stronger as he reached his conclusion. The Meridia Accords are not about punishing the Empire. They are about establishing that some actions are so wrong, so evil, that the galaxy will not ignore them. They are about saying that justice matters more than politics, and that the strong cannot terrorize the weak without consequences. When Jake returned to his seat, the chamber was silent. Even representatives from worlds that opposed the Accords seemed moved by the evidence he had presented. Supreme Advocate Yithrak took the podium next. The massive creature's voice boomed through the chamber like distant thunder. The Empire has maintained order in this galaxy for over 800 years, Yithrak began. We have prevented countless wars, protected trade routes, and brought civilization to primitive worlds. The events on Meridia Prime were a necessary response to terrorism and rebellion. The Empire's defense followed predictable lines. Claims that the executed beings were terrorists who had killed Empire citizens. Arguments that galactic law could not supersede the sovereignty of member worlds. Warnings that supporting the Accords would lead to chaos and the breakdown of interstellar order. The humans are newcomers to galactic society, Ythrak declared. They do not understand the complexities of maintaining peace among thousands of different species. Their naive idealism will destroy the stability we have worked centuries to build. The Empire's presentation included their own evidence, reports claiming the Meridia Prime rebels had planned terrorist attacks. Testimony from Empire officials describing the threat to public safety. Economic data showing the benefits Empire rule had brought to conquered worlds. But Jake had anticipated these arguments. When the time came for witness testimony, he called General Kexval to the podium. The former Empire general walked slowly to the center of the chamber. His reptilian features showed the strain of the decision he had made to testify against his former superiors. Many Empire representatives hissed in anger as he approached the podium. "State your name and former position for the record," Jake requested. "I am General Kexval, former commander of the 4th Empire Legion. I participated in the operation on Meridia Prime." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Even Jake felt his heart racing as he prepared to ask the questions that would either prove his case or destroy it. "General Kexval, were the beings executed on Meridia Prime convicted of crimes in a court of law?" "No," the general replied firmly. "No trials were held. No evidence was presented. No defense was permitted. Were they given any opportunity to surrender or negotiate?" "No, the orders were clear. All suspected rebels and their families were to be eliminated." "Their families?" Jake repeated for emphasis. "Yes. Children as young as 5 years old were included in the execution orders. The Empire wanted to eliminate not just the rebels but their entire genetic lines." Supreme Advocate Ythrak jumped to its feet. "Objection. This witness is a traitor who abandoned his oath to the Empire. His testimony cannot be trusted." Speaker Melodian raised one hand for silence. "The witness has been verified by Council security. His testimony stands." Jake continued his questioning for another hour. General Kexval described in detail how the Meridia Prime operation had targeted civilians, how children had been separated from their parents before execution, and how Empire soldiers had been ordered to broadcast the killings to maximize terror. When the testimony ended, the chamber erupted in angry discussions. Representatives from Empire-allied worlds demanded that the general be arrested as a traitor. Coalition supporters called for immediate action against Empire officials. Speaker Melodian called for order and announced that the formal vote would take place the following day. As delegates filed out of the chamber, Jake felt exhausted but hopeful. The evidence was overwhelming, and General Kexval's testimony had been devastating to the Empire's defense. But he also knew the Empire would not accept defeat easily. Intelligence reports suggested Empire warships were moving toward Nexus Prime. Admiral Sullivan had positioned Earth's fleet in a defensive formation around the planet, but they were vastly outnumbered. That evening, Jake received an urgent message from Ambassador Vextar requesting a private meeting. Against Lisa's advice, Jake agreed to meet with the Empire diplomat in a secure conference room. "Ambassador Harrison," Vextar said when they were alone, "the Empire is prepared to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" Jake asked suspiciously. "Withdraw the Accords proposal and the Empire will provide Earth with exclusive trading rights to 3 star systems rich in rare minerals. Your species will become wealthy beyond imagination. And if I refuse?" Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Then your species will learn why the Empire has ruled this galaxy for 8 centuries. Your fleet is small, your worlds are few, and your people are soft. Do not mistake our patience for weakness." Jake stood up from his chair. "Ambassador Vextar, I have an offer for you as well. Surrender Emperor Krathmak and the officials responsible for Meridia Prime to face trial, and humanity will consider mercy for the rest of your people." The Zethran diplomat hissed angrily. "You dare threaten the Empire?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Jake replied calmly. "I'm simply stating facts. Tomorrow the Council will vote and justice will finally have a voice in this galaxy. The Empire can choose to be part of that justice or it can be judged by it." As Vextar stormed out of the room, Jake wondered if he had just declared war on the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But looking out at the stars through the conference room window, he felt no regret. Some things were worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Tomorrow. The voting chamber fell silent as Speaker Melodian prepared to announce the results. Jake sat in his chair feeling his heart pound against his chest. 3 months of work, countless hours of diplomacy, and the hopes of billions of beings across the galaxy all came down to this moment. The vote on the Meridia Accords has been tallied, Speaker Melodian announced. 847 worlds vote in favor. 623 worlds vote against. 234 worlds abstain. The Meridia Accords are hereby adopted by the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from coalition worlds cheered and embraced each other. Empire allies protested loudly, demanding recounts and challenging the legitimacy of the vote. Jake felt Lisa grab his arm in excitement, but he could barely hear her words over the noise filling the massive room. Ambassador Vexitar stood up slowly from his seat, his yellow eyes burning with rage. When he spoke, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. The Empire does not recognize the authority of this council to interfere in our internal affairs, he declared. These so-called accords are meaningless pieces of paper. The Empire will continue to govern its territory as it sees fit. Speaker Melodian called for order, but Vextar was not finished. Any attempt to enforce these illegal accords will be considered an act of war against the Zethran Empire. We advise all worlds to consider carefully whether they wish to face the consequences of supporting this human madness. With that threat hanging in the air, the Empire delegation walked out of the chamber. Jake watched them leave and realized that winning the vote was only the beginning. The real challenge would be making the accords mean something in practice. Over the following weeks, Jake worked with his coalition partners to establish the Galactic Justice Tribunal. They chose Haven's Rest, a neutral world far from any major power's influence, as the location for the new court. Jake accepted the position of chief prosecutor, knowing that someone had to take responsibility for seeing the process through to its conclusion. The Empire's response was swift and predictable. They declared the tribunal illegal and warned that any world cooperating with it would face economic and military retaliation. Several smaller worlds that had supported the accords began to waver under the pressure. But Jake had learned something important during his months of building the coalition. Fear was powerful, but it could be overcome by hope and determination. Working with Admiral Sullivan and Captain Torres, he expanded the Protected Commerce Initiative to include any world that supported the tribunal. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Alex Stone, leading a human intelligence operation, discovered the location of active Empire prison camps through intercepted communications. The camps held over 200,000 prisoners from dozens of different species, all being held without trial or hope of release. We have 3 camp locations confirmed, Alex reported during a secure video conference with Jake and Admiral Sullivan. The largest is on Kesseran 4, about 6 hours from the nearest Empire fleet base. If we move fast, we could reach them before reinforcements arrive. Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical data carefully. It's risky. We'd be attacking Empire territory directly. That's definitely an act of war. Everything we've done so far has been an act of war in their eyes, Jake replied. The difference is that this time we can save lives instead of just making speeches. The liberation of the prison camps became the largest combined military operation in the coalition's short history. Ships from 37 different worlds participated in the coordinated strike. Admiral Sullivan commanded the overall operation, but every species contributed their best. Vessels and crews. Jake watched the operation unfold from the command center on Haven's Rest. Reports came in every few minutes as coalition forces overwhelmed the lightly defended camps. The Empire had never expected anyone to actually challenge their authority directly. First camp is secure, came the report from Captain Susan Park. We're loading prisoners onto transport ships now, estimated 2 hours for complete evacuation. Second camp reporting all clear, followed shortly after. Prisoners are in poor condition but alive. Medical teams are providing immediate care. The third camp provided the biggest surprise. Among the prisoners was Thera Kess, the former planetary governor of Meridia Prime. She had been captured during the Empire's takeover and was scheduled for execution along with the 50,000 beings who had died in the broadcast. Governor Kess has agreed to testify before the tribunal, Alex reported. She has detailed knowledge of Empire operations not just on Meridia Prime, but across their entire occupation zone. The prisoner liberation operation rescued over 200,000 beings and provided dozens of witnesses for the tribunal proceedings. More importantly, it demonstrated that the Empire was not invincible. Their military had been caught completely off guard by the coordinated coalition attack. Emperor Krathmak's response came within days. The massive ruler appeared on every communication channel across Empire space, his red eyes glowing with fury as he spoke. The terrorist coalition has attacked sovereign Empire territory and stolen valuable prisoners, he declared. This act of war will not go unpunished. All worlds supporting the illegal tribunal have 48 hours to withdraw their support or face the full might of imperial justice. But the Emperor's threats rang hollow. Intelligence reports showed that the Empire was facing internal problems for the first time in centuries. Several border worlds had declared independence after seeing the successful prisoner rescue. Empire military units were being redeployed to deal with growing unrest rather than threatening coalition worlds. The tide turned completely when General Kexval, now leading a growing resistance movement within Empire territory, contacted Jake with stunning news. A group of moderate Empire leaders has made contact with us, the general reported during a secret transmission. They're prepared to arrest Emperor Krathmak and hand him over to the tribunal in exchange for guarantees that the Empire will be allowed to reform, rather than be destroyed. Jake felt his hands shake as he absorbed this information. Are you certain they have the capability to carry out such an operation? They control the capital defense fleet and the Emperor's personal guard, Kexval replied. The Emperor has ruled through fear for so long that even his own people have grown tired of his brutality. The coup happened 3 days later. Jake watched the news reports with amazement as Empire military units surrounded the Imperial Palace on Zethros Prime. Emperor Krathmak was taken into custody without a shot being fired. The new Empire government, led by Chancellor Vostar, immediately announced their intention to cooperate with the tribunal and implement major reforms. 6 months after the vote on the Meridia Accords, Jake stood before the completed memorial wall on Haven's Rest. The wall contained the names of all 50,000 beings who had died on Meridia Prime, along with thousands of other victims of Empire oppression discovered during the tribunal's investigations. Therakes stood beside him, having become a powerful advocate for the families of the victims. Do you think they would be proud of what we accomplished? She asked quietly. Jake looked at the wall of names stretching before them. Each name represented a life cut short, a family destroyed, a future stolen by those who believed might made right. I think they would be proud that their deaths finally meant something, he replied, that the galaxy refused to forget them or let their killers escape justice. The memorial wall bore a simple inscription in dozens of languages. Never again, the galaxy remembers. As Jake read those words, he thought about how much had changed since that horrible day when he had watched the Meridia Prime broadcast. The galaxy now had permanent institutions dedicated to protecting the innocent and holding the powerful accountable. The tribunal continued its work, investigating atrocities and ensuring that justice transcended political boundaries. Emperor Krathmak and 47 other Empire officials were serving life sentences for their crimes. The reformed Empire was working to make reparations to the families of their victims and to rebuild the worlds they had devastated. But Jake knew the work was far from over. Evil existed throughout the galaxy, and it would always seek new ways to terrorize the innocent. The difference now was that good beings everywhere knew they did not have to face that evil alone. Lisa approached him with a datapad containing reports of new troubles on the galactic rim. Another crisis was developing, another test of whether the galaxy would stand up for what was right or look the away when confronted with injustice. Jake took the pad and began reading. The work continued, as it always would, but now humanity and their allies had proven something important, that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do. And that was exactly when it mattered most. Looking up at the stars visible through Haven's Rest's clear atmosphere, Jake smiled slightly. Somewhere out there, other beings were watching and waiting to see if justice would come for them too, and thanks to the Meridia Accords and everything that had followed, the answer was finally yes.